Sarah had always found solace in the quiet town of St. Francisville, Louisiana. Nestled along the Mississippi River, the town was a picturesque blend of antebellum homes, sprawling oak trees draped in Spanish moss, and a stillness that felt like stepping back in time. For Sarah, it was the perfect refuge. Born deaf and mute, she had learned to navigate the world through her other senses, finding beauty in the vibrations of the earth beneath her feet, the way sunlight filtered through the trees and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. She lived in a small, weathered cottage on the outskirts of town, surrounded by dense woods that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. It was a peaceful life, one she had carefully crafted for herself after years of feeling out of place in a world that often didn't understand her. But lately that peace had begun to unravel. It started with small things Sarah could almost convince herself were figments of her imagination. A book she was certain she had left on the coffee table would be found on the kitchen counter. The curtains in her living room, always drawn shut at night, would be slightly open in the morning. At first, she brushed it off. Maybe she had forgotten. Maybe the wind had blown the curtains open. But the occurrences grew more frequent, more unsettling. One evening, as she sat on her porch sipping tea, she caught a movement out of the corner of her eye, a shadow darting between the trees. Her heart skipped a beat, but when she turned to look, there was nothing there, just the swaying branches and the fading light of dusk. Days turned into weeks, and the unease deepened. Sarah began to feel as though she was being watched. It was a sensation she couldn't shake, no matter how hard she tried. She would wake in the middle of the night, her skin prickling with the awareness of another presence. She would lie perfectly still, her eyes scanning the dark room, her hands gripping the edge of the blanket. The house was silent, but the silence felt heavy, oppressive, as though it was hiding something. One night, the feeling became too much to bear. Sarah had gone to bed early, exhausted from a day of gardening, but she woke abruptly, her body tense and her heart racing. She sat up, her eyes scanning the dark room. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the air, a heaviness that made it hard to breathe. Slowly, she swung her legs over the side of the bed and padded to the window. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the yard below. She peered out, her breath fogging the glass, and that's when she saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the woods, barely visible in the shadows. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the darkness. He was perfectly still, his gaze fixed on her window. Sarah stumbled back, her hands trembling as she fumbled for the curtains and yanked them shut. She pressed her back against the wall, her chest heaving. Who was he? What did he want? She tried to calm herself, to think rationally. Maybe it was just a neighbor out for a late-night walk, but deep down she knew better. No one lived nearby. The woods were vast and empty, and the nearest house was miles away. The next morning, Sarah tried to convince herself it had been a dream, a trick of the moonlight. But as she went about her day, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She found herself glancing over her shoulder, jumping at every flicker of movement in her peripheral vision. That evening, as she prepared dinner, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The back door, which she always kept locked, was slightly ajar. She stared at it, her mind racing. She was certain she had locked it. She always did. Her hands shook as she reached for the door and pushed it shut, turning the lock with a decisive click. She leaned against it, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Someone had been in her house. Someone had been in her house while she slept. The days that followed were a blur of fear and paranoia. Sarah began to double-check every lock, every window. She slept with a knife under her pillow, though she knew it would do little to protect her if someone truly wanted to harm her. She started carrying her phone with her at all times, though she couldn't call for help. She could only hope to text someone if the need arose. But who would she text? The police? What would she say? That she felt like she was being watched? That her curtains were open? It sounded ridiculous, even to her. One night, Sarah woke to the sensation of the floor vibrating beneath her feet. She sat up, her heart pounding in her chest. Someone was in the house. She could feel their footsteps, faint but unmistakable, moving through the rooms below. Her hands trembled as she reached for the knife under her pillow. She crept to the door, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the moon streaming through the windows. She paused at the top of the stairs, her breath shallow. Downstairs, she could see the faint glow of the kitchen light. She never left the kitchen light on. Her grip tightened on the knife as she descended the stairs, each step creaking softly under her weight. The house felt different, colder, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, she paused, her eyes scanning the living room. Everything seemed to be in place, but the air was thick with the scent of something metallic, something sharp. Blood. Her stomach churned as she stepped into the kitchen, her eyes widening in horror. The room was a mess. Drawers pulled open, utensils scattered across the floor, and there, in the center of the room, was a pool of dark, sticky blood. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she followed the trail with her eyes, leading to the back door, which was wide open. She took a step forward, her foot slipping in the blood, and that's when she felt it, a presence behind her. She spun around, her knife raised, but there was no one there. The kitchen was empty, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. She had to get out. She had to run. But as she turned back toward the door, she saw him, the man from the woods. He was standing in the doorway, his face twisted into a cruel smile. His eyes were dark, empty, devoid of any humanity. Sarah's body moved before her mind could catch up. She lunged forward, slashing wildly with the knife. The blade caught the intruder's arm, and he stumbled back with a grunt of pain. Sarah didn't wait to see what he would do next. She bolted out of the kitchen, running for the front door. Her hands fumbled with the lock, her fingers slipping as she tried to turn it. Behind her, she could feel the vibrations of his footsteps as he approached. Finally, the lock clicked, and Sarah yanked the door open, stumbling out into the night. The cool air hit her face, but she didn't stop. She ran, her bare feet slapping against the pavement as she sprinted down the driveway. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. The woods loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, but she didn't care. She would take her chances with the trees rather than face the monster in her house. She plunged into the woods, the branches scratching at her arms and face as she ran. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move and shift around her. She could feel the vibrations of the man's footsteps behind her, growing louder as he closed the distance. She didn't look back. She couldn't. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on getting as far away as possible. But the woods were vast, and Sarah was quickly becoming disoriented. She had no idea where she was going, no idea how to get back to town. The trees seemed to close in around her, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her lungs burning with the effort. She could feel herself slowing down, her legs growing heavy. She couldn't keep this up much longer. Suddenly she tripped, her foot catching on a root. She fell hard, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. She scrambled to her feet, but it was too late. The man was on her, his hands grabbing her arms and pinning her to the ground. Sarah thrashed wildly, her silent screams echoing in her mind. She could see his face now, illuminated by the moonlight. His eyes were filled with a terrifying hunger, a desire to destroy. Sarah's hand found a rock, and she swung it with all her might, catching him in the side of the head. He grunted in pain, his grip loosening just enough for her to wriggle free. She didn't hesitate. She ran, her body moving on pure adrenaline. She could feel the vibrations of his footsteps behind her, growing fainter as she put more distance between them. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Finally, she burst out of the woods and onto a road. She didn't recognize it, but she didn't care. She ran down the middle of the road, her chest heaving, her legs threatening to give out. In the distance, she saw the glow of headlights. A car was coming. She waved her arms frantically, tears streaming down her face. The car slowed, then stopped, and a man stepped out, his face filled with concern. Sarah collapsed into his arms, her body shaking with sobs. She couldn't explain what had happened, couldn't tell him about the man in the woods, but it didn't matter. She was safe. For now, she was safe. The man helped her into the car, his voice gentle as he tried to calm her. Sarah stared out the window as they drove away, her mind racing. She knew this wasn't over. The man in the woods wasn't going to stop. He would come for her again, and next time, she might not be so lucky. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling tale of Sarah's harrowing escape, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more terrifying stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Remember, the shadows are always watching, and danger can lurk where you least expect it. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and keep your doors locked. Good night.